Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of Spiritual Youth Circle. We're really excited that you're here. And if you want to, you can turn your cameras on so we can have a more inclusive experience. And to start with, I think people are just coming in. So we'll just start with an icebreaker. And the question of today's icebreaker is, what is something that helps you relax or unwind from a busy day? So I can start first. Something that really helps me relax or unwind is probably reading because I'm not really concerned about something that's going on outside and I can just find that space for myself. And we can do a popcorn method. So I'll call on someone and then we'll keep it going until we're done. So Anushri, do you want to go next?
Yeah, something that helps me is I usually just go in my backyard and like water the plants or something. Yeah. Um, Jeremiah, you can go.
Yeah, I also do that too. Water my tiny garden, and also meditating. Meditating always the go-to for me. Me, Harik.
I like to go on drives with my family, and that's kind of ironic because I'm driving right now. But popcorn renani. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong.
You pronounced it right. For me, I like listening to music. It really helps a lot. Um, Anshu, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks. I also agree with Jeremiah. I found meditation to be very helpful because throughout the day I'm doing so many things, and it's nice to just focus on one single thing and clear everything out of my mind. I'll popcorn to Nick.
Thanks. One thing I like to do is to play music. I like playing, I'm a bass player, so that's the instrument I practice most often. I find it's nice because one, I'm practicing to develop a skill, but two, I get to control the like the sound that's in my environment. So it's up to me what I get to feel, and that's really helpful. Uh, Avantika.
A good way I like to like relax is by doing yoga because it like completely takes your mind off everything else you're doing. Because like you're it's also good because you're moving your body and it's nice to like really bring the attention back to yourself. Okay, Yash, did you go yet?
I like to unwind by going on walks or just like doing exercise, just to like get rid of any excess energy, I guess, or like any bad vibes, stuff like that. Keep it real.
I really like to go hiking. It's one of the things I really enjoy, and it really helps me unwind. Sueka?
I also really like listening to music. I think it's a really nice way to just relax after a super long day. And I also like just talking to my friends about their days, get my mind off of mine. Oh, my bad. Sorry. I popcorn Anushri.
I think Anjika didn't go yet, right?
Wait, should I just okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know because I'm pretty boring. I just my go-to for everything is sleeping, so I don't know. It's less sleeping and just like lying there and thinking about whatever. I don't know. Is there anybody who's left? Because I don't know.
I think everyone went, right? Okay. So this activity was like a nice like transition to what something we're going to talk about. And I just want you guys to observe what you said. And the things that you said were very simple. These weren't things like going on a trip to Hawaii or winning $1 million. They were as simple as maybe like watering your plants, listening to music, going on walks, even sleeping, which is something that we wanted to discuss today, which is the idea of simplicity and purity and how that can really help us live a good and nice lifestyle. So before going into simplicity, it's really important to realize what's complicating our life. And these are many things. So when we lose the simplicity, we end up chasing many things at once. And something that I heard was a statement that said, if you chase two rabbits, you're not even going to catch one. So it's really important to be, aware of your main goal rather than, complicating your life in many different ways. So the first thing that really complicates our life and how we can get over that is expectations. So just by a show of hands or reactions, you can even put in the chat. Have you ever set, expectations for something or someone and they didn't live up to their expectations as you would want them to? I hope I'm not the only one. Okay. I see Anshu's reactions. Okay. Okay, I hope I'm not the only one. Well, I've done that a lot of times. And what happens is that when we're setting these expectations for people, we always feel disheartened when they don't live up to that expectation. And I can give an example. So growing up, I was very excited for having a birthday party. And whoever came to my birthday party, I had these expectations for what gift they would get me. And I always expected something grand. I didn't want like a greeting card, for example. But unfortunately, my friends didn't live up to that kind of expectations. And my best friend, even like, she got me a greeting card for my birthday. And I was like, okay, this is nice. I was grateful for it, but she didn't live up to the expectations. And I ended up feeling unhappy. So I didn't achieve that same happiness I would have achieved with getting something grand, but I realized that I was really unhappy. So it's really important to, set lower expectations or even having no expectations. Is kind of like being in the mode of like giving back rather than, receiving everything. So with no expectations, we assess what we receive based on their true value, not based on the expectations we've already set for them. So I just wanted to ask you guys, did this like go back to any memories that you had, or is this something that you agree with? Okay. I hope it's something that people agree with. And then the next thing, I'll give an example. So trick or treating was a very like important thing in my life growing up because I really, really like enjoyed going up to houses. But something that I really hated about it was, in there's some houses they leave a bag of candy out and they don't like let people knock and they say just take one or two. And at that point, oh my God, yes, Anjika, go ahead. You can share before I'll go on. Okay. Okay, I'll finish my story and then you can share. Okay, so trick or treating, they leave a bag out and they say you can take like one or two candy. But I found myself like taking like five. I was like, who's gonna notice me? It's fine. I can just like take five. I don't have to take something that's kind of set aside for me. So that's where I realized something, that it's important to not do something that's really not set aside for you. And this is something that's mentioned in the ancient wisdom literatures. And it's the idea of tyaktena, which is a Sanskrit word. And it means a set apart quota. The idea that there's so much in this world, but I don't need a lot to live a happy life. And we should understand this idea and learn to accept our set aside quota, right? So when we learn to accept what we have, we really realize that we don't need more. And this is something that really relates to gratitude, which is what we talked about in the last lesson, if you were there. And so when we learn to accept the idea, we can really take in mind that we have a set apart quota and we don't need more than that. And I know a lot of people had reflections before. So Anjika, you can share, and then Nick, you can go ahead after.
Yeah, so I was going to share when somebody failed the expectations I held for them. So I had a best friend in, I think, 5th grade was the last time I had one. So I hadn't met her so this is like 2 weeks before lockdown. I had like a sort of birthday party thing, just like one person, just her. And the last time I'd met her was like 1.5 years previous to that point. And then she'd been kind of nice. She'd been nice and like, I guess, but at the birthday party, or like, it's not really a party, she was kind of passive aggressive and mean, and I'm homeschooled, so she often implied stuff like do you sleep late? That's so lucky. And so and then she kind of bent all conversations so they centered on her. Um, and so she kind of failed my expectations. So I kind of learned not to hold them.
Yeah, I really connect to that. A lot of times it's important to like analyze the relationships around you and really see like even if she didn't pass her expectations, they weren't like nice things that she was doing. So just taking that out really helps you like be in that mindset of simplicity and I'm not really inclined towards accepting what she's saying. Nick, do you want to share your thing now?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I remember learning about something like this in a philosophy class. That there was the particular philosopher from the 1700s, and they said that the easiest way to attain happiness is just to lower your expectations. That yeah, you can do all these like positive things that can make you feel happier, but way easier than that, much simpler than that, is just to lower your expectations and, like you said, even have none. And I just thought that's so true because I'm never more pleasantly surprised than when I'm not expecting anything at all. Like today, Renani came to this class, and I didn't know she was gonna come to the group. Like she's from my club at my school, but I was like, oh, Renani's here. Like that, like super surprised me. So no
Wait,
expectation, super happy.
I love that. I couldn't have said it better. It was amazing. Okay, and then the last thing was just like simple things make us happy. It's as simple as that. And I just wanted to share something. So when I got the gift, so remember my friend gave me that greeting cards. I wasn't really happy about it, but I still have that card. And whenever I look at it, I read what's inside, and those memories just like flash in my mind. And I'm kind of going back to that point where she gave me the card. So just these simple ideas of, giving. She didn't have to give me a grand gift to make me happy. And if I had lowered my expectations, I would have been happier with the simple thing that she gave me. Right. So when we learn to appreciate like the simple things in our life, then we can lower our expectations and, learn to live simple, that simple life. And this also applies to how we're interacting with others. So simple things like maybe writing a thank you note or doing something that's kind, without expecting something in return. The idea of like selfless service, doing something not because you have to, but doing something because you kind of want to, right? So does that connect with everyone? Like, do you also see that a lot of times simple things make you happier than, going into that? Okay. Okay, well, that's really nice. And now I'll just like open the floor to people if you have reflections on this idea and we can go on from there.
I definitely love that this topic is about simplicity because that's something that I like later in life. I definitely finally got grasp the concept of because like when I was younger, I'd always have this big idea of like you said, grandeur things where like I'd want to be driving a nice car by age 21, have be traveling by age 21. I want to have a big group of friends and all these things, but I really found simple things like just hanging out with my mom, being around my cat, finding love in what I already have. And that just made me so much 10 times happier than constantly needing this external thing to grant me happiness.
You're getting a lot of hearts in the reactions. So yeah, I really relate to that. That's a really nice realization. Anyone else?
I actually had a question. So, a lot of times I find myself wanting to keep low expectations because I've like discovered in the past about how like high expectations haven't served me well. But do you have any tips on how to lower your expectations? And this can be for like anyone who has any like experience with that.
Well, I was thinking about the idea of gratitude and how we're in our environment when we learn to accept what we have And it's the idea of need versus want. Like, I don't want it, but I need it. So when we learn to, in my opinion, when you develop that attitude of gratitude, then you're kind of lowering your expectation right then, because you're grateful for the things around you and you don't need more than what you already have. So going back to the idea of quota, what we talked about, so taking what's set aside for us and not going beyond that. I think that can really help you kind of lower your expectations, because you already know that I'm grateful for these things and I don't need to go beyond that. But if anyone has any like tips on that, or if you realize that, you can share also. Okay, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, and then we can go on to the other point. So Anshu, if you want to get us started.
All right. Thank you very much, Manya, for those wonderful examples on simplicity. And now moving on to purity in our show for today. First, before we actually get into purity, let's talk about what are some of the hindrances or impediments to actually being pure and living in purity. And the first of those is actually cheating. And I'm sure that many of you have already heard so much about cheating. I know for me personally, every single year at school, they tell us you shouldn't be cheating on any of our tests because otherwise you'll get a 0 on this test. You'll be kicked out of our school, kicked out of the country, all these scary things that might happen if you cheat. But instead of this fear-mongering approach of trying to convince someone to do something because of the fear of the consequences, what if instead we had a better mindset onto this? Instead of saying you shouldn't do this only because of the fear of the consequences, instead of what if we had a perspective as to, or instead of what if we had a perspective that the only reason I'm going to do this is because I want to live in purity, not because I'm afraid of the consequences. So I was just wondering if you guys had any thoughts on cheating, or perhaps a different perspective or something that people might not have thought of before.
I think a lot of times people like go towards this idea of cheating because they think that no one's watching them, and they feel like, I can do this because it's like a secret between myself. And I think that just like points to like doing it for yourself, like being honest within yourself, rather than like going like, oh, no one's watching me, so I can do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and sometimes if you actually get away with it, then what's really preventing you? What kind of perspective could you have? Because now there's no longer any fear of consequences because it didn't actually happen. So do you guys know of any ramifications that could happen potentially in the future that you might have thought of or experienced, maybe, or not necessarily personally, but for someone else, that maybe if they didn't realize that this cheating actually led them to devastation later on? So
I think usually when people cheat, it's on tests and stuff, so they don't have to do the work, or they didn't do the work ahead of time, so they don't have to do it now, and so they cheat because they don't know how to do it. And so like when they actually need to use that skill set that was on the test, they realize that they can't do it. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. That's exactly the exact point I wanted someone to bring out, which is that when you actually need to use what you've been cheating on all this time, and you might be surprised, then you won't actually know how to use it because you've been cheating this entire way. And also, I've seen that even if someone actually develops the habit of cheating, even if they know how to do something, or it's actually not very difficult, because they've developed this idea that I don't actually need to do so much work, they'll still end up cheating on even the smallest things because they don't think it's necessary for them to continue working hard. So thank you very much, guys, for your wonderful points here. And next thing I thought about, which is one of the hindrances to purity, is actually duplicity. So let me ask you guys a question. Has anyone ever told you, I'm going to tell you a secret and I want to make sure that you don't tell anyone? If that's the case, you can react in the participants. Has anyone told you a secret and said, don't tell anyone? All right, great, everyone, nice. Now I'll wait for the participants' reactions to go down because I have one more question. Has anyone ever told you, I'm going to tell you this secret. Don't tell anyone, but then you still ended up telling someone. Okay. Wow. So here, this is what we call duplicity. And no, I'm not calling you guys duplicitous because my question didn't allow for context or anything. So one thing I've noticed is being duplicitous is really not beneficial for relationships because there's this idea of a hierarchy of loyalty where someone will confide in you and tell you that I'm only telling you this because I know that you're loyal to me. But then you might actually be more loyal to someone else. And then you can tell someone else, I wasn't supposed to tell you this, but I know that you're loyal to me. So I'm going to tell you this and make sure you don't tell anyone. But then that person might actually be even loyal to someone else. And hopefully it's not the original person because that would be sad. And this, although it's not fully necessary to tell everyone everything, if you want to actually develop a genuine friendship, being duplicitous can really be detrimental because once trust is lost, it can really never be regained fully. And I have a personal example or a story of my own. A couple of years ago, I met this new friend and he seemed to be a pretty cool person. And then I actually found out that he had the same dietary restrictions as me. So I just told him that I had certain dietary restrictions, and he also said that he had the same ones. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. It's not that I wouldn't have been his friend if he didn't have the same dietary restrictions. I just thought that's something that we could relate to. But then over the next couple months, I started noticing that he kept forgetting that certain things he was eating had his so-called dietary restrictions. And then eventually one day we were at this school organized pool party. And the only thing I could have at that pool party because of my dietary restrictions was a half melted popsicle on a paper plate, which wasn't very nice, but that's the only thing I could have. And he also came there and he also had to have the exact same thing. But then I actually had to leave early from there. And then I remember that I had forgot something. So when I went back, I saw that within the 5 minutes that I left and came back, he had a full plate filled with everything from the party, which he said that he wasn't allowed to have. And then I thought, wow, what was really the point of all of this? Was it really necessary for you to do this? You really didn't gain anything. Nothing, there would have been no issue if you didn't have the same dietary restrictions as me. But after this, my trust just completely got lost. And not just me, because this kind of attitude of duplicity, you might think that it will only affect you in one relationship, but once you develop this habit, it can affect you in all sorts of relationships. So not only me, but so many other people started losing trust in him as well. So I was wondering if you guys have any other personal examples or experiences with duplicity, or maybe how you reacted to someone being duplicitous towards you.
I think like Anjika said, elementary school was like peak time for all of this to happen. And I remember I had a friend in elementary school, and I think she was very she changed herself a lot for everybody, and it was kind of like I saw her acting completely different around one group of friends and then acting completely different around me. And I think that kind of just like made me stop. I'm so sorry for the background noise. I think that kind of just made me stop like confiding in her or like just telling her stuff that it was like I think because like she was so different around everybody, and I was like, yeah, I'm not just just not gonna tell you anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I really dislike that as well. When someone is only acts with me in a certain way, but with everyone else just tells them everything and really makes me think that they're talking about me behind my back. So anyone else has anything?
Sorry, can I share another example?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, being that I just revealed myself as duplicitous friend in the chat, I'm sorry. But in again, elementary school, so I used to have this friend, and for like, I don't know, 6 months. And so we were really close friends for a while, but then there was like that whole boy girl rift that happens in later elementary school. And so he invited me to his birthday party, or rather, his mother invited me to his birthday party. And at the birthday party, I brought like a National Geographic subscription because he'd always wanted one. And it was just like a little card compared to like the rather big boxes that everybody else was bringing. And so he opened mine. So my card was at the very bottom of like the gift cart, and he opened everybody else's first, and they were gonna take the cart away until he noticed that it was at the bottom, and he sort of so he opened it, and he was actually more excited about it than he was for the other presents. And I don't know, that kind of made, so initially he'd kind of like looked disappointed, like right at me. I'm sorry, I'm not being very clear about this. So initially he'd given me like this disappointed look, but then he became really happy when he noticed that this was like a National Geographic subscription. But after that point, I kind of couldn't trust him anymore, because it's like, are you my friend for who I am or for what I give you? So.
Yeah, well, that's such a wonderful example. And I think that really relates to what Manya was saying, which is that for such people, you shouldn't really have any expectations for them. You shouldn't expect them to do something after they've already broken your trust. Yeah. All right. Anyone else have anything about duplicity?
I think it's a really interesting topic. And I think one of my biggest pet peeves is like fake people. And I really avoid them. And I only surround myself with people that I think are genuine. And I really do think everyone I surround myself with is super genuine. But I also think duplicity kind of has like its own inner workings. I think like a lot of people who are fake or duplicitous are very like people pleasing type of people. And so they want to have a lot of friends, and they want people to like them and appreciate them and like accept them. And so they kind of change who they are around different people to get them to accept them the best, if you get what I'm saying. And so I think it's like, it's not very black and white. I think there's a lot of gray area when it comes to duplicity, because like everyone is going through their own things inside. So we should have a little bit of kindness towards it at times. Yeah, it's a fine line.
Yeah, that's great. And that exactly relates to the third thing I have about hindrances to purity. And the last one is diplomacy. So I think the way you described it, it makes a lot of sense, how sometimes there's a lot of gray areas. And I think that's where diplomacy comes in. So if I were to tell you, you shouldn't be diplomatic, you might think, wait, that doesn't make sense. Isn't being diplomatic a good trait to have? Isn't diplomacy something that's good? If you actually look up the definition of diplomatic, I looked it up, and it says having or showing an ability to deal with people in a sensitive and effective way. Now that seems good, doesn't it? You should be dealing with people in a sensitive and effective way. But I'd like to take the angle of, if you think about diplomats, when they go to foreign countries, on the outside, they appear to be very friendly and very open to everyone else. But internally, they're really just working for the self-interest of their country. So I think that's what a lot of relationships are like. I've seen that at school, for me in particular, or not for me in particular, for everyone, there's a lot of competition in schools. There's so much competition, and that leads to a lot of diplomatic relationships where I've sometimes found, if I know that someone will be able to give me answers, if I have a question on something I can ask him, then I'll strategically have that person in my friend in the class, because I know that I can use them for help. And these kind of diplomatic relationships happen all the time. And to some extent, they can't be completely avoided. You can't just be open and tell everyone, every single person you meet, tell them everything about you. But if you actually want to develop genuine friendships, you can't be diplomatic. In a good friendship, it's all about being mutual. You have to be giving and also receiving. It can't just be constantly taking and taking from the other person. You also have to be giving as well. So I was wondering, do you guys have any thoughts on competition in schools and how this relates to diplomacy, or anything about this topic in your life?
Yeah, I can go real quick. I think one thing you could do instead of like being diplomatic in the sense of like, I think the definition Unshu gave was suggesting that when you're diplomatic, you're while you are being like kind of kind and respectful to people, it's out of your own self-interest. I think like something you could do alternatively just to be like respectful, not trying to like do the same things as someone who's diplomatic would, just not out of self-interest, just out of like being a genuine person.
Yeah, that's great. It's all about perspective. You can be doing, two people can be doing the exact same thing, but perspective can really change if it's good or not. So, anyone else have any thoughts on diplomacy? Yeah.
I think it's a good approach. I think like it's very important with a lot of things in life to handle things with a clear head, because when you're emotional or like, I guess, undiplomatic, like, you know how diplomacy is like separating church from state and like getting rid of like the emotion in government almost. They try to do that kind of. And I think like when you're handling situations and like people in life, it's so important to kind of take that diplomatic approach and get rid of like how you feel and kind of just look at it clearly, level-headed, and like a third person perspective almost. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I liked how you put that as well, with how in foreign countries they really try to take emotion out of it, because that would lead you to better decisions. If you're just emotional, you could make irrational decisions. So now we've learned how it's important to not cheat. Obviously, it's important to not be duplicitous and to not be diplomatic in the context of working in your own self-interest. So now you might be thinking, so if these are all the ways you should not be doing relationships, how should you actually maintain a good relationship in purity? And that's exactly what we're getting to next with Niharika, explaining honesty and being open.
Hey everyone. I apologize in advance if there's any technical difficulties, but I'm just going to go ahead. So we now know that duplicity and just not being straightforward can lead to a bunch of overcomplication. In no way helps us lead a life of simplicity. But if we do want simplicity in our lives, then I think we need to inculcate honesty and openness. And part of these characteristics include things like being open to and for new things, as well as being favorable to the truth, which is our perception of things within and without, just being reflected in a transparent manner through our speech and actions. That was kind of wordy, so just to make it a little bit easier, it's like whatever we're thinking and feeling, we're just able to convey that in a truthful manner. So, for example, if we're talking to someone, we convey what we're thinking through our speech. Now, if we take it one step further and we think of confiding in this person, then and telling them the truth, then I think it takes a level of kind of self-assurance and self-security to bring forward that honesty. Because if we feel that we're lacking something in ourselves, then we might feel inclined to alter the truth in some way, or just make it fit the story of yourself and your narrative better than the truthful narrative. So when there is self-confidence, though, it's honesty comes with a lot of ease, and we don't really concern judgment too much. And in my case, I was kind of fearing judgment within by myself, just fearing being real with myself, as well as external criticism and just judgment too. So what was happening was my parents pointed out to me that they thought I was using my phone for too long. And I was like telling them, what? No, I'm not using my phone for too long. Like, I'm totally fine. My grades aren't suffering because of this. And I think I know people longer than me. And I think I'm at the lower end of the spectrum anyway, so it's fine. But as I was saying this, I kind of had an inkling in the back of my head that was like, well, you kind of do know that you're using your phone for too long. But my parents kept persisting, and they were like, nah, you should probably think about changing your ways. And finally, I was ready to accept it, and I got around, and I was like, okay, I am using my phone for too long, and I told myself that. And then once I told myself that, I was able to be honest with my parents. I was like, yeah, there are better ways to be utilizing my time. So when I was honest to myself, that's when I was able to be honest with my parents. And that was a complete turning point in the discussion because before I was just kind of like babbling and brushing it off. But when I was being honest with myself and my parents, it opened up so much room for introspection, and it opened up lots of room for growth as well because I was able to recognize my priorities and see that there is room for me to treat myself better by using my time better. So, with honesty, I was thinking that we're able to reflect on the reality of things and either be content with this reality or feel the need to change this reality. And I think there's a fine line between just recognizing reality and telling yourself reality and being overtly harsh with yourself. We don't want to um, be too like harsh on ourselves because I could have easily said in that situation like I am going to fail at life now that I'm using my phone for too long. But obviously I decided not to do that, and I was deciding to not focus too much on making my mistake worse, but kind of healing the mistake. And one of the ways we can just help with the things we concentrate on and insecurities is with positive self-talk. And if we think of positive self-talk like an ointment and our insecurities like wounds, then we can realize that to heal our wounds, we need ointment. We use positive self-talk, we can give affirmations, and it can be very healing. But this all influences our life and how honest we are with ourselves and others as well as our decision making. Okay, I was just checking if I'm lagging out or not. So if our wounds continue to make us uncomfortable in life and unhappy, then we can nourish ourselves in other ways by different activities that are beneficial to either our body, mind, or our spirit. And that could include things like working out for our body and studying for mind, as well as if you want to sit and meditate for meditation. Like Jeremiah is also saying meditation helps him. So meditation is a super awesome way to go. So has anybody experienced the benefits of positive self-talk? Like what you've gone through maybe, or just your experience of how your different kind of self-talk changed?
Definitely, I can definitely say positive self-talk has been I started dealing with mental health crisis when I was a freshman in college, and I got a therapist who was like taught me all about positive self-talk and was like it can change so many good things for you, and it did. It changed the way I view myself. It changed the way I react to things. It just made me a better, healthier person, and it's helped me heal so much.
That is so
Wow,
sweet.
yeah.
I'm really happy.
Yeah, I can really second that one. I think like positive self-talk is everything. And I just dropped a quote in the chat. It was like, if you talk to others the way you talk to yourself, like would you have any friends? And I think for a lot of us, we'd probably be a little bit toxic if we talk to others the way we talk to ourselves. And that inner critic is so real, and it's so like I guess mean at times. And so I think it's like the same way you would treat your best friend, you should be treating yourself. And with kindness and patience. And like at the end of the day, the only person you have to live with forever is yourself. So like why are you being mean to yourself? Why? So yeah, those are my thoughts. Okay.
Yeah, I think that like we kinder to other people or to ourselves. People say like you can't love others if you don't love yourself. But I think kind of like back. I feel like unless we love others, we can't love ourselves. I feel like almost all of us on this call, like we're pretty like being kind to people, but being kind to ourselves, like an entirely different stories. So what I think about that. Yeah.
I think definitely not being too hard on yourself is something, I don't know, I find that super important because in the end, like Soika said, you're the one you have to live with forever, no one else. So you might as well be nice. And I personally, I sometimes am definitely a little hard on myself, but I've been kind of getting better at it by like just saying that if I do mess up or if something wrong happens, I can fix it. And there's no need for me to be like beating myself up for no reason. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think That just thing about learning to be honest with yourself in the right way and just with the positive self talk. I think it's like a learning process, and beginning to be honest can also just change you. And it can set up a trajectory for happiness because when honesty is there, it stems from self confidence. And we know that self confidence roots from self contentment, in which we accept our shortcomings and we acknowledge our capabilities so that we can cope with and we can grow from all of our downfalls. So we know that honesty starts from within, and when we've achieved honesty within, we can create that same mood in our environment, and that can happen even naturally because, I was honest with myself about my screen time usage, and then I was able to be honest with it to my parents. And once it starts from within, it can be reflected outwardly. So just having that honest and deep conversation, it can, quote, I was reading this quote that said, honesty is the highest form of intimacy. And really really communicating and placing your trust in someone means that you have a healthy relationship, and it can lead to a sense of peace and lightness in yourself and as well as in your relationship with the other person with honesty and openness. I was recently encountering a situation when somebody thought that somebody else was being kind of off and acting kind of off with them, and they were confused as to why. And when they confronted the person about it, they were like, nothing, no big deal, like it's nothing. But I was just really like noticing how big of an effect that had on her. Like she wasn't being honest, or the other person wasn't being honest. So the person was kind of just feeling sad about it. And if we are honest, we can avoid all of this mental baggage and drama, as to say. So it's important to also remember the fine line between clearly communicating and being overtly emphatic and not being too mellow or too angry. And we need that kind of balance in the middle. So I think that plays in where we need to present the truth in a very palatable way. And this is recommended in the ancient wisdom literatures. So I was reading them and I came across this point, and I'm going to quote the following. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others. I'm going to read it again just because it's so awesome. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others. I've been going on for the past 7 minutes or something, and I think I could have just said that and that would have been enough because that is basically everything I wanted to say. And it's kind of crazy how these pieces of wisdom from ancient literatures are so accurate because they're ancient, but they're so spot on. One of the things that I just noticed in this quote that it said that things are not agitating to others, but like, what if you want to say something that is constructive criticism? That might be a little agitating, but this line also made sure to mention it was beneficial. And when I was thinking of that, I was just like, this is a base for a lot of the common things we have today that we say to sayings. Like, if you don't have something good to say, just don't say it. And I think that comes from this like point. So it also mentions austerity of speech, and austerity can mean different things in different contexts, but in these literatures, it's more synonymous with discipline, and discipline is really beneficial for yourself at times if you've noticed that within yourself. So going back to the whole talking to others thing, in healthy relationships and interactions, it's really easy to open up, and we can show aspects of ourselves that might not be perfect, and we can be vulnerable and we can open up. And in this process, it's possible to shed some of our ego, and in this when we're confiding in someone. So has anybody experienced how freeing just it is to confide in someone and what feelings that might have brought about? If you want to share your experience.
I was thinking about something you mentioned about discipline, especially. So I connected this with like my lifestyle and like just my diet. So I'm a vegetarian, but a lot of times in school, people around me are eating meat, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. But when they like offer me, I'm like, no, I have this discipline, and like these are ideals that I want to follow. And I feel like this discipline has really helped me live that simple lifestyle because I'm not really being affected by my environment. So, I'm like grateful for this idea of discipline and how that can really help us live like a simple lifestyle.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's a really great point. So when we also just like talk with others and we peel our ego, it's easy to develop an attitude of humility. And when we're humble, it can be a very pure state of consciousness and very simple as well. So you can really focus on the moment and be simple in living and also just be humble. And when we're humble, we don't really think of ourselves as the primary doers of everything, like I'm so cool, I'm the cause of everything. But we recognize our teachers and other people that are our mentors that have helped us to get to where we are. And as well as if we want to think of it in a spiritual context, we can think of different forces that help us, like internal forces, external forces, and even higher forces. So internal would be like our own effort and fulfilling our responsibilities and doing our duties. And external would be some things like friends, family, people, or other living entities. And higher forces can be things like you recognize are beyond your control and they just come into your life by themselves. So we don't really think of ourselves as doers too much when we give credit and be grateful to these other forces and people that have helped us to get to where we are. And I was wondering if anybody has a memorable experience where something just came together, maybe against all odds, and you thought like there were different forces that were helping you do this. Just off the top of your head, if anybody has something cool. Okay, well, I think when it's on the spot, it can be harder to think about it. But in conclusion, I was just thinking that if we're trying to work up to being honest and open people, we should work on ourselves and we should find contentment and esteem in ourselves. And doing so brings about meaningful relationships and conversations and experiences that have the ability to bring about tremendous growth and reflection. And it even brings about humility, which is a very simplistic and a grateful state of mind. And it's crazy how all of these traits that I was mentioning intertwine together and they kind of make the basis of a happy human being. And when people say or ask what they're looking for in a relationship or any relationships, we say all these things like kind, compassionate, cool, humble, etc., etc. But even saying honesty is enough because it conveys and entails so many other traits. And that is the conclusion of his point. And if anybody wants to say anything just about anything, please feel free to do so. But otherwise, we'll be moving on to the next point by Anushree.
I liked your point about how like the truth is good, but then like or like your words should be kind. But sometimes when you're giving constructive criticism, then the truth isn't exactly always kind. And I was thinking of something I heard from someone, I don't even know who, it was like a long time back, but it stuck with me. And they said like if you use the truth as a weapon, you're not honest, you're simply just an attacker. And I think that really hits for when it comes to constructive criticism. Like you can wield the truth however you wish. And if you wield it with kindness, then it's constructive criticism. And if you wield it like being rude about it, then you're just mean. You're not being constructive or kind or anything. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
I also really agree with how when you're in a when you want a relationship, you're like, I want this and that. And I really agree with the main point or like the main thing that you really need in that relationship is honesty, because that's the basis of everything. Like everything comes from that one that just comes from honesty. So I think that was really important what you said.
Yeah, so thank you, Niharika. Oh, thank you, Niharika, for all those wonderful points about being open and honest. So now we'll talk about how to be uncluttered. And it has two parts to it, internal clutter and external clutter. I'll be covering the internal part, and Avantika will finish with the external clutter. So, internal clutter is kind of a lot harder to understand than external because, at least most of the time, external clutter is physical and we can see that it's cluttered. But internal clutter is subtle and it's not gross. So, but it still affects you just as much as external clutter does. Let me introduce this with a little story. So in 2004, Gmail newly came out, right? And it was only available by invite. So my dad got an invite from his colleague, and he was really excited about it. Now he can use Gmail. And so the first 3 emails he got, it was welcome, new features, please share this with your friends. And so he started using it a lot more after that, right? So now when my dad logs on to Gmail in 2021, there are like 5,000 unread emails, and it keeps piling up more and more every day. And Gmail, over the years, it recognized that people were having difficulty staying on top of their emails, and hence it made different features like categorizing emails into social, promotions, important, to help the user stay on top of their emails, right? But still, every day, so much more information comes up that he can't keep up with it. And like, even with me, there's so much junk email flooding my inbox that I can't keep up with all of them. So, what would happen right now if I went through all of those emails that are unread and unimportant? I would waste like an enormous amount of time. So much time I would waste just reading all of those, which is why I don't do that. You won't read all of those unnecessary emails. So, if I don't read emails that aren't important, why do I waste so much time on thoughts that linger in my mind that are not helpful? And sometimes with those thoughts, I suddenly realize that several minutes or hours pass by without getting anything productive done because I was thinking about what happened in the past, or I'm anxious about what's going to happen in the future. So, how do we stop this? If you notice, sometimes at the bottom of emails, there's usually an unsubscribe button that you can click, unsubscribe, and all of the emails from there will stop coming to you. So, how are we supposed to unsubscribe from all these thoughts that are just clouding up our mind? What's our mental unsubscribe button? Well, unfortunately, it's not that simple. You can't just go click unsubscribe to all this overload of information in your mind because your mind doesn't come with that. So, what should we do instead? Um, have you ever noticed that you have a computer or a device next to you where all these emails and all these messages keep coming in, but you're doing an activity that you really enjoy? Like right now, I'm reading a really good book that's engaging, and I'm not really bothered by, while I'm reading that book, I'm not bothered by whatever is going on my phone if I'm getting any messages, because this is so much more interesting. Same with if someone likes playing basketball or making art and they're really engaged in it, and they're not gonna really be bothered by whatever messages or emails they're getting because what they're doing right now is so much more valuable. And so, similarly, obviously, you can't unsubscribe from thoughts in our mind. Sure, there's ways to prevent them from coming in the first place, but what we can do is that we can upgrade our habits so that we're engaged in higher or better activities, so that when these inferior thoughts keep coming in, we're so engaged in doing tasks that are more fulfilling in nature that we have clarity on what our priorities are. And these thoughts won't consume our time as much. So also you can think about it like this. Um, so think your mind is a mirror, okay? So just imagine your mind to be a mirror. And the more you accumulate and gather from interaction with people, habits, thoughts, engagements, more dust piles up on this mirror, and it keeps getting clouded from everything you collect in a day. And you notice that in a dusty mirror, you can't really see a reflection of yourself. So when you start cleansing this mirror of your mind, you develop more clarity. And when you develop more clarity, your mind can stay more focused on things that are more truly important. And so, therefore, at the end, you can be directed more by consciousness. And so, one way to cleanse the mind or the mirror of the mind is meditation. And meditation can take a whole topic on its own. And actually, we will have a topic on that. We have a program coming up soon that expands more on meditation. So, yeah. And next, Avantika will give her little spiel on external clutter.
Okay, yeah. So now moving on from internal to external. The most like basic thing I guess you'd consider with external is just keeping your workspace clean. And this is something I really fail to believe actually works, even though I know it has a huge impact. When you wake up and enter a clean room, your mind feels so much cleaner and it can really increase your focus because you're no longer distracted by like minor things. Like, I think the other day, I was like working at night and then I left like all my papers and like my laptop like open and like not charged. And the next morning when I woke up, instead of being like really present in the moment and focusing on like my new day and like the task at hand, I was still like a victim to yesterday's messes since I didn't clean up. So I still had to like work past all of that. And in fact, studies actually show that an average worker loses about an hour a day to disorganization. So if you really think about how much you work in a day, like, and you subtract an hour from that, you can see like how much time you're just losing because you're being messy. So some practical tips to be clean. I don't follow all of these, but I hope I'll get there one day. But one is to like clean up consistently after you take something out. This is really difficult because like I'll always stick with this from the beginning, but if you really persist with this habit, you'll notice how your life becomes so much easier. And one habit I have been sticking with is every night, like before I sleep, or not exactly before I sleep, I'll set a 5-minute timer to clean up something in my room. It doesn't like whether it's like clothes on the ground or if it's like just like cleaning my mirror. I think I did that the other day. And it doesn't matter what it is, but over time, like all of these tiny things will add up and you'll notice how your room and like your workspace becomes a lot cleaner. And yeah, so does anyone have any like thoughts about keeping their workspace clean and how it's made a tangible impact on them?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel definitely feel less kind of stressed because I just feel like if I have so many things lying around, like my mind is just always like distracted and doing work, and I'm like, oh, I have this thing lying around, I have that thing lying around. And by the end of the day, like, yeah, with everything piling up, like it takes, yeah, a long while to clean up. And so what I found kind of helped was like I just have one place. Right now I use like a plastic bag, but like maybe actually I also have like a few boxes too. But yeah, as soon as I see something that's lying around, like a pen or like that I don't need, or like 3 pens that I don't need, I can just take that and throw it in the box, and so I don't have that clutter right away, and it's very instantaneously like cleaned. Of course, you'd have to like kind of organize where your pen should be, or where, yeah, where your other things are, like papers and all that. But having that kind of thing called gathering points, where you gather like all these kind of materials that's lying around, it's like good to declutter very instantly.
Yeah, for real. Visual noise is a thing. I know everyone always talks about how they're like distracted by like noises in their house, but visual noise is very real. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a point. This kind of relates to what Shweka was saying earlier about how if you treated your friends like you treat your mind, would you have any friends? The same goes for clutter. Like I'm pretty messy. That's just by my upbringing, and I can get embarrassed if like people come into my space because like if I haven't cleaned up beforehand and like people come over and there's like stuff laying around or it's like not up to like a high enough standard, it's like, oh, I'm not just it makes me think like, oh, if it offends them, it must be affecting me every day too. Like it's like that visual noise is just really distorted or like painful. So it's like, geez, I better clean up my act, you know?
Yeah, I feel that. Hey, anyone else? Or
Yeah, real quick, you can probably extend that Gmail analogy that Anushree mentioned for internal decluttering to external decluttering too. So I think she mentioned that you have like a full inbox, like a lot of unread emails, and they're just there. And she said you can start unsubscribing from like future emails, so you don't like add to your inbox. But then like with external like decluttering, if you have all these unread emails that you're not gonna like ever read, they're sitting there, might as well move them to trash or spam or wherever you need to just kind of help organize like your existing inbox even more.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, in case there's nothing else. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna move on to the next thing. So, from this theme of keeping a clean workspace, we are able to see like the environment we surround ourselves with makes a huge difference. So, Sueka actually posted this quote on her Instagram recently, which said that you're not only what you eat, like your diet isn't only what you eat, but it's also what you watch, listen, read, who you hang out with, etc. So, everything we surround ourselves with makes a huge difference, and really we're just like a mosaic of all of that. And this concept is really heavily spoken about in like ancient wisdom literatures as well, about how all the impressions and content we consume have the power of affecting our consciousness. And based on all like these impressions, we start to think differently and our perspectives are built differently. And the beautiful thing about like our lives is that we have the choice to change what we listen to or like the subject we're paying attention to. So it's really important to consume the right content, because all of this stuff that you're consuming, like Anishri said, like our mind is a mirror, and by whatever like activities we go around during the day, all of this stuff ends up cluttering our mind. So it's best that we choose correct content, so we're around like uplifting vibrations. A few examples that like I've related to is that earlier, or not earlier, like some days I find myself like very on social media if I'm having like a lazy day and I just like don't feel like doing a lot of things. But I've noticed that like after a while, when you continuously be on social media for a long time, you end up comparing yourself to someone's perceived life, even though if like you made the decision not to be on social media, you would have been totally fine in that moment. And the same way, like this is especially real right now with all like the difficult news that's going around in the world right now. If you're constantly paying attention to the news, your life is going to be filled with negativity at all times. So it's really important to like choose when you consume content, so your like brain is able to handle everything correctly, as well as you keep a good like environment within yourself, like a positive environment. And beyond just like content you consume, this also goes for like music, sound vibrations, and especially people. Like I found that when I'm in a group of people that don't share like the same morals and like um don't have like the same like views on life, as well as engage in like very negative conversations, I can feel such a large lasting impact on myself. Whereas now, after creating like a good group of friends where we relate to a lot of similar things and have similar standards and morals and values, I can feel that like all my conversations are very authentic and actually uplift me instead of tear me down. So yeah, this is just like the importance of keeping a very good, not only physical diet, but as well as a diet of like what you consume and what you surround yourself with on the daily. Does anyone have any like direct experiences where they see that like what they consume has been doing them well or hasn't been doing them well?
I have this older half sister, and I was around her for a while, but she was really negative, like just always internalizing bad things, making everything like drama out of everything. And I didn't notice it at the time, but looking back, I started to act almost similarly. And I was like, whoa, I'm glad I stopped talking to her because she was having this negative effect on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Nishi.
Yeah. I was realizing that I was just like looking back on some memories before the pandemic, and I kind of associated with school people a lot, right? And they weren't the best people to hang out with. So I was just realizing um, now that there's the pandemic, I don't really talk to them as often. So I was just realizing um, like my thought process has changed a lot since then because they kind of affected it. So yeah.
Anyone else, or else we can, or else I'll wrap up my point over here. Okay, sweet.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I know it went a little over time. I'll just quickly share my screen for our next program. Okay, so Our next program will be next week, same time, same link, and the title is Attaining Bliss. And so make sure to remember on May 23rd is our next program. All right, I hope you guys all found this program beneficial. React if you gained something from it, just helps us know. All right, thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can email us here, hi@spirituallyouthcircle.com, and our website is spirituallyouthcircle.com. All right, thank you guys very much for joining and have a great day. See you next week.
Thank
Bye,
you.